You're listening to a social justice podcast hosted by Nicola Spurling, brought to you by The Flag Shop, and inspired by a social justice coloring book. Hello and welcome to a social justice podcast. I'm your host, Nicola Spurling, and today I'm joined by Alex Braverman and Amy Bell. I know Amy from my time on CBC's The Early Edition, where I spent some mornings as a political pundit. Amy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, we know each other from the show. We follow each other on social media. I'm the traffic and weather reporter for The Early Edition, and then I do a parenting column for radio and for the web as well.
Yeah, and the parenting column is exactly why I thought of you for this podcast.
Exactly, yes, and I have a boy and a girl, so definitely an issue I'm very invested in.
Fantastic. And Alex is actually my boss's daughter, and we've had a number of conversations about sexism in the past. Would you like to introduce yourself?
So my name is Alex, and I do not work for CBC, but I have had lots of conversations with you just about this topic, and my generation had a lot to do with it was the slut-shaming era, so I'm excited to talk about that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Or not fantastic, but
well,
we'll see how this conversation
It's made for
goes.
a great conversation today.
Yes,
so.
Exactly. Perfect for this conversation. This is a very large topic, and I want to be able to provide a bit of an explanation about what sexism is, how it affects us all. And with that in mind, I wanted to start this conversation with some statistics from the World Economic Forum and from the UN. Women are 47% more likely to suffer severe injuries in car crashes because safety features are designed for men. At the current rate of progress, it will take 105 years to reach gender parity. Only 6 countries in the world give women equal rights to men in the workplace. Those countries are Belgium, Denmark, France, Latvia, Luxembourg, and Sweden. For every woman in film, there are 2.24 men. Women hold just 28% of managerial positions worldwide, and that percentage hasn't shifted since 1995. 1/3 of women have experienced intimate partner violence, and 18% have experienced it within the last year. And at least 200 women that are living today have experienced genital mutilation. So with those fun statistics, let's begin this conversation with some questions.
Yes.
Great.
The first question, and I do this with every podcast, and it's a very difficult one to answer, but it's what is the topic? So what is sexism and how widespread is it in today's society?
I mean, I think it's incredibly widespread.
Yeah.
It's insidious in so many aspects. Like you were saying, like you don't think about your safety when you get behind the wheel of the car. You assume that it's safe, not thinking that it was not designed for you, that it's already designed with somebody else in mind. So for me, the sexism is just is that continual standard that women are upheld to that men aren't, and it's those small steps and advantages that men take for granted that women never get afforded. Whether it's at work, whether it's feeling safe when they're walking alone, and then as a mother of like a daughter and son, just to see the way they're treated differently already, and have been since birth, it's quite saddening just to realize that it hasn't gotten tremendously better. And like you said, it would take more than 100 years for us to reach gender parity. To know that that's not going to happen in my lifetime or my children's lifetime is shocking.
Or at least if we don't do anything to make it better at a faster rate.
Make a big difference. So it's depressing. Really.
It is.
It is.
It's just so prevalent in all of our society.
Yeah.
Especially like when you see commercials for vehicles too. How many commercials say made for you, designed for you? Like these vehicles are designed for you, but are they? Though they're not, because they are if you're a man or you have a certain manly body type, but it's really not designed for everyone. It's just designed for like every man, mostly.
So when we say sexism, are we talking about discrimination based on sex, or are we talking about discrimination based on gender, since the two of them typically are sort of used interchangeably?
Yeah. So I guess it's, it would be somebody that lives their life as a woman and that society, I guess, views as a woman would be the people that I feel are experiencing the most sexism. And that's such an interesting point because it's another layer that's been added almost to the whole issue, which I think is great. That we're having these discussions based on, there is a difference between sex and gender. So I think it has changed that definition just because there are more people, I think, living a truer life for themselves. And so they may live, differently than how they were born. So yeah, I guess, there's a lot of that internal sexism that some people might feel based on how they present or how they truly feel. But I think in this day and age, it still has a lot to do with those who present as female and choose to live their life that way.
And I think there's probably always going to be some overlap when it comes to things like reproductive rights. And you may have someone that identifies as a woman, but is not necessarily going to be accessing all of the same healthcare needs as a cisgender woman, for instance. So there's definitely overlap, but I think what you're saying about how you're perceived by the world is probably sort of the biggest factor in all of that, because a lot of sexism relates to how you're being perceived.
Yeah, very much so.
For sure. Because, like a lot of me and my friends, we all say like women should be supporting women. And that's like, it's empowering, but it's also kind of sad at the same time that it has to be women supporting women and not people supporting people. Because there has to be this like added thing for women to say like, hey, like we get dogged on so much by guys that we should be uplifting, and guys don't see that. It becomes this like female responsibility to take care of each other because they just don't want the responsibility of changing.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it as well, because I don't think that there is that sort of community feel among men that there is among women, because there's not that sense that you have to band together in order to
because it's a gender bias. Like it's go do it, women. Like you take care of each other. Like I don't want to,
Yeah.
Like us men don't have to take care of each other. You women take care of each other, and it's it's a little degrading. But I mean, I'm all for supporting women. I just wish people could be supporting people.
And it's out of necessity sometimes. I mean, it's out of a need for safety or to accomplish things that men can do on their own. Yeah. So I just don't think they have that mindset of needing that kind of support.
Yeah. It's even like if I'm going on like social media or like marketplace, if I'm selling something, I try to avoid buying and selling things from men in particular, just because like there's this like intimidation, and they don't even really understand like their approach either. Like I gravitate more towards like buying or selling things from a woman because I'm not going to feel this pressure or this like force to do things a certain way. And if I've explained to any of them like where I'm coming from, it's like, oh, you're a bitch, you're a whore, you're this and that, like you're all this stuff. And it's like, I don't want to have to always just like pick and choose based off of gender who I'm going to sell and buy things from. But that's the only way that I feel comfortable at this point.
Well, I guess there's so much talk about when you're buying and selling things from people, make sure that you're in a safe place, a public space, things like that. And I would imagine that advice primarily applies to women buying things from men. You don't want to wind up in a situation where you're
ask them at your home.
Yeah. And I have had this is my first time ever selling something on Marketplace too. I had two, like I'm at this point, like I wasn't even 29 yet at this point. And I had two kids come, these males come that were like 17 or 18. And they forced the phone out of my hand and took off. Like to the point where it's like, I get very uncomfortable. It's not even like, I just get uncomfortable when I'm, doing exchanges primarily with men, but it's not even like the exchange. But it's more like the conversation, because it's, you're going to do this and I'm going to do this. And no, I'm going to pay you this. And what's your address? I'm coming there. Over like, is this available? Yes, it is. What's your address? I'm coming there right now. I'm buying today. It's like this.
So they're telling you instead of asking.
Yeah, they're telling instead of asking, and to the point with like certain guys just make them go away. I'm like, okay, I'm going to need 50% down up front. And they're like, oh, you're a scammer. You're this. You're probably not even a woman. And I've even sent them videos saying, hi, I am a female. Like, this is real. This is not fake. But it's their approach that just makes me so uncomfortable. And then to be called out for being insincere or, you know, just because I feel uncomfortable because they won't, like, it's not registering with them that this is my item that I am selling. It's about both of us. It's not just about you.
Yeah.
Right. That sort of equality piece.
Yeah.
You want to be treated equally.
And I think men too, they're taught their entire lives to take control of a situation and, you know, have the upper hand, man up. And, it, you know, in terms of talking about them not feeling that need for community, you know, it's sad in a sense. They've sort of been taught to always, go solo and be the one in charge and not need anybody and not ask questions. Yeah. So, you know, it's just as a disadvantage to them. Like, the sexism is terrible for women, but I also think ultimately it's terrible for men too. It takes a lot away from them.
Totally. Like, I was with one of my friends, Sean, and I asked him, he hasn't had a girlfriend in a while. I asked him, I was like, well, have you tried doing, you know, these like dating sites? And he's like, it's embarrassing that I'm in my late 20s living at home and I don't drive. But would that be embarrassing if you were a woman? Probably not. No. So it's like, it is, there's this pressure for them, like even the expression like man up, you know, it's like, it's saying like man up, be a man, don't be a woman, you know, don't be a little wimp, you know?
I mean, I guess I have a unique perspective on that.
You do.
We should be interviewing you.
I know. But from both sides, what's your opinion?
It's very true, though, because there was that sort of pressure that I felt prior to transitioning that I had to know everything that I was doing, and I wasn't allowed to show any kind of weakness or anything like that. And the pressure is sort of off now. I don't have that pressure. So as much as there are many negative things that affect women that relate to sexism, there are also negative things that affect men. Yeah. And so I don't think it's just about making life better for women when we address the issue of sexism. It's about making life better for everyone.
Like the equality, And that is true. And, you know, I was thinking, because you said you actually get like a dual perspective. I feel like, and this is me not speaking from any experience at all, just for, I guess, from like outside looking in, I feel like it's almost more like I've had friends who have transitioned, you know, from female to men, and it's a lot more they feel a lot more accepted transitioning from female to men than other people I know that have gone the other way.
I've absolutely heard that as well. And I think it's that idea that people can understand why you would want to be a man because men are better. But people can't understand why you would want to be a woman. And it's not about wanting, obviously. Like, it's just about who you are. But and in a lot of people's minds, that's how they view it, right? They're like, why would you ever want to be a woman?
Well, I mean, why would you? Like, that's the thing. Like, nobody, I think, would consciously make that choice because it comes with so many dangers and inherent, you know, unfairness. But as you said, it's not a choice. That's who you are. But I think, people have a hard time imagining like why you would want to do that. Why would you want to face sexism and, you know, make less money and be in danger on the streets? Like it doesn't make sense to most people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest argument in favor of, you know, trans people being who they are. Like, why would you want to do that if that wasn't who you were? But I think it does give people an interesting perspective when they've lived life sort of being perceived one way versus the other. And maybe that'll come up again throughout this conversation. I did want to get into sort of who is most affected by sexism. And we've kind of touched on that. Women are more affected than men, I think, by sexism, but both are affected. Are there other groups that you feel are more affected by sexism? Like if you're part of some other minority, are you going to experience the effects of sexism more so? Or is that just sort of a separate issue that kind of piles on to the sexism issue?
No. I think maybe like depending on like certain cultures, right? You know, I remember I was in high school and we watched this video, and it was this video about photography, and it was a woman in India, and it's just about how like girls grow up knowing that when they grow up, they're going to sell themselves for sex. It's just what they do. Their husbands are they're going to do an arranged marriage. The husbands are allowed to beat them. They're allowed to sell them for sex. And that's just how it's going to be. So, I mean, obviously that's not like that here. So I think culturally there's probably in different areas, there's a huge difference, you know, of like who's affected by it based off of just whatever the culture is.
Right. Yeah. I guess culture does play a huge role in sexism.
And I mean, like, I'm well aware that, simply by being a white woman, I have far more opportunities than, a Black woman or a woman of color. So there's many levels. And I think, I wasn't raised with any sort of religion. So there was none of that sort of pressure to be, somehow a servant to your husband or to place men higher above myself. So I think depending on, like different areas of the world, women face more sexism. And I think that's something all women have to be aware of, that it's not just a woman issue. There's many levels to it.
And I mean, every time we do one of these episodes, it always comes down to a conversation around the intersections of all of the different issues, right? Yeah. There's all of these different issues that are coming together, and sometimes it can be really difficult to differentiate between them. Yeah. Am I being treated poorly because of my gender, or am I being treated poorly because of my skin color, or is it a combination of both? Is my age factoring into this? There's so many different factors. Do you find that you're able to pinpoint when you are experiencing sexism, or is there always that question, like, is this something else at play here?
I think, well, from personal experience, especially, I guess sometimes recently, but a lot more when I was, probably in my earlier 20s. It would be the kind of thing where it's like, if I had a boyfriend and I hooked up with somebody else, I'm that whore who cheated on her boyfriend. But if I was a girl that was single and hooked up with a guy that had a girlfriend, I'm that whore that hooked up with another guy's girlfriend.
So you just get the blame regardless.
Like no matter what. Even with my ex-boyfriend, who I cared so much about. I saw him somewhere. He had a girlfriend at the time. We both had like a lot of alcohol and did things that we probably shouldn't, because we were not together anymore, and he was in another relationship. And so many mutual friends that we had found out about it after. I was uninvited to everything because, Alex, you shouldn't, I don't want to say his name, but you should have known about, like, how Stan is. You should know this. Like, what you did was wrong. For like a year, my actual boyfriends would not let me come to these social things because my ex's girlfriend was pissed off about it. And so therefore my ex was like, I don't want her around.
So even though you weren't the one that was being unfaithful in that situation, you were the one that got the blame for it.
Yeah, because he's a guy. It's expected. Guys are players. Guys do these things. Guys get drunk and like mess around. But as a woman, we should be smart enough to know that and not do the same thing.
Right.
And it pisses me off. Not gonna lie to you. Like even in certain situations now, which we'll a little bit later, I'll go into detail on those. But it pisses me off. It does.
It's hard. It is hard to know. And I find, like, as I get older too, I'm 46. I'm not that desirable age. And so I do, like, especially in perhaps like in a career-wise, like, I'll have to think, like, am I getting treated this way because I'm a woman? Am I getting treated this way because I'm, aging?
Yeah.
You don't always
Seasoned.
Seasoned.
Yeah, I was watching a video recently, actually, where they talked about how age is sort of a currency, and you lose it over time, and you stop having the same opportunities that you used to have when you were younger because you're no longer considered desirable or attractive. But men don't really see that to the same extent.
No, they're, considered a silver fox, or, everybody thinks George Clooney's,
Well, he is.
He's not held to the same standard that I think, say, Julia Roberts.
I was just thinking, I had Ocean's 12 in my head. So I was like, Julia Roberts.
And I think, for women, there's so many, you're too young, so you're not to be trusted, or you don't know what you want, and then you're in your childbearing years, so, you don't get afforded certain things because you might just run off and have a child at any given moment, so why invest in that? And then, yes, you maybe have a little window where you're like, golden, but then you age out of it.
35, maybe.
Not,
not there yet, but
you kind of become this old crone. So yeah, I don't think men have that. No, their child not bearing, but, their parenting age is never factored into an advancement or a promotion, but it is for women.
I don't think I've ever seen an article where it's a picture of some guy on the beach who's a famous actor, and they're going, wow, they really let themselves go, right?
Yeah.
It's, don't see
It's like, look at
cellulite.
Britney Spears and like her stomach. No, I don't really read the tabloid magazines, but it's always a woman that's like, the tabloid catches them like walking out of a grocery store and they just happen to look really bad that day. Or they get photoshopped and even into looking a lot worse.
Well, I mean, I think about Billie Eilish and the fact that she wears these really baggy clothes, or at least used to, because anytime she didn't, people would be commenting on her body.
Yeah.
Like, there's one picture of her where she was wearing a tank top, and suddenly it was like open season to comment about a minor's body.
I know.
It's just so weird.
Disgusting, yeah.
And I see that in my daughter. She's she'll be 16, so she's in grade 11. And I see that, that hiding in big hoodies. Part of it's style and comfort, but there is, you can see it in them. There's certain times where they're just hoods up, hoodies tight. They don't want to be known for what is is underneath that hoodie.
Yeah.
And that's their choice, and you have to respect that. But it's sad that
It's true.
a minor, will have to think about that when they go out.
I used to always say, like, I bet people would like me if I was thin. Not maybe like I bet people would like me if I was nice. I bet people would like me if I was thinner. And that's one of the, I know that it's more going into like the body image one, but that's why I started wearing almost everything I wear is like crop now, because it's like, this is my body. This is my body. I love it, regardless of if it's 500 pounds or if it's, 100 pounds. I'm gonna own the skin. And that I would not have thought of that when I was 16, for sure. I think that started coming in more when I think me getting to my like heaviest weight was when I said, okay, like, I think owning this is what's going to help, feel confident enough to like want to love myself into changing it, so that's why, like, hopefully it's very rare that you'll ever see me like not wearing things that are short, because I don't want that to define me. I don't want my age, gender, body, nothing to define me. I want to be defined by my person. And there's not a lot of people that, like, especially like from, there's not a lot of women that will judge that with men that same way, but I feel like there's more men that care about what you look like than there is women that care about what men look like, from personally speaking. Yeah.
I think also
they're more embarrassed by it. It's like, oh no, can't, like, oh, look, her girlfriend has one eyebrow, or, she's really bad skin, or, oh, like, I can see her love handles, so my friends can't see that. Where if a guy has one eyebrow and is overweight and has really bad skin, but comes in and he's really funny, all of the girls are just gonna be like, oh my God, he's so funny, Yeah,
and I think that's partly why you can't really separate that body image issue aspect from sexism, because women are treated very differently than men when it comes to our bodies.
And I always wonder if my dad would treat me differently if I was a guy. Because it's always no pressure on my brother, like my stepbrother. We never have conversations about him, but, I see my dad and it's, oh, you put on weight, or, oh, like, you lost your job, or this. He so fixates on all of these things. Is it like, if I start dating somebody who doesn't drive, my dad thinks he's a loser. It's like, is that because those are your views on things, or it's because that's your views on what your daughter should have? And
that's one of those aspects I don't have an answer to as a trans person, because I don't know if my parents would have treated me differently either. If I'd grown up differently.
You don't, and I you always hope that you're treating your children equally and fairly. Will I give my son the same lecture about being alone at night that I'll give my daughter? No. Will I question if his pants are too tight when he goes out?
No.
Probably not.
Are they the same age, or who's older?
She's older.
Okay.
She's 16 and he's 12.
Okay, so when he's 16, is he going to have the same curfew?
Exactly.
None of my guy friends ever had curfews.
You don't ever think that you will do that, but it is different. I have different concerns for her than I will have for him.
Yeah.
And it must be really tricky, because you're, on one hand, recognizing that you have to treat them differently as a necessity because society treats
Exactly.
men and women differently.
No matter how equally I want to treat them, once they leave the house, that doesn't factor in.
It's true, yeah.
Anymore. I can't say that every man she encounters will have been raised by somebody who teaches them to respect women.
Yeah.
To,
if his clothes are too tight, is he gonna risk coming home being assaulted or something?
Yeah.
Actually, you never know. Like there could be some some people that might look at him and think that he's a little flamboyant, and then
Exactly. There's always different concerns. Like true equality, it can't really happen right now because you do have to recognize the differences in the way they're treated.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about that flamboyant aspect, why is it that men get treated poorly when they're flamboyant? Is it because they're acting feminine?
I think that's exactly it. They're women. For some men, I think if a man likes another man, that's a woman. Women like men.
It's shameful to act like a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's it's derogatory. Like men will say, "Oh, don't be a little bitch."
Yeah.
To another guy.
Be a little girl. You're being girly.
Yeah. And it's strange. Like, and it's my son's in that age. He's 12, so he's in grade 7. So things are changing. Like hormones are starting to come into play. And,
fun. This is going to be an exciting time for him.
It's so exciting. I love it. Puberty is great.
This said no one ever.
I don't have kids. Like for me, I want to skip for me now, not having children. I just want to if I could just put them in a time capsule and speed up until they're in high school and then get them back. I'm good at that part. I'm good at the high school part. They were only gone for 5 minutes.
It's all there's so many interesting stages, but it is sort of seeing them mature a bit. But my son and his friends are very, they've always been sort of my husband and I or, other parents, sort of joke, we're like, oh, these are little boys that have been kissed and hugged a lot because they're all very physical with each other still. They are very open to, hug each other and, when they sit and watch a movie together, they'll, have their head on each other's shoulder. There's an intimacy to them that I don't remember boys having when I grew up. So it's nice to see that at least is changing. Yeah. But at the same time, it makes me sad because I worry that as they get older and go into high school, is that behavior still going to be accepted? And, will that sort of be, taught out of them and that they will not feel as comfortable being affectionate with, their friends, girl or boy. I'm hoping that won't be the case. Yeah. I think I'm lying to myself if I say that won't be the case, and that is sad. Yeah. That's how they communicate still, and that's how I think humans naturally communicate. But for some reason that is taught out of boys still. So
it's that toxic masculinity.
It totally is. It is. It's that it's not allowed because it's girly. Yeah. I don't know why that's such a bad thing. I think being girly is awesome, but it's not seen as a power. Yeah. It's not seen as a benefit still.
My friend has a 2-year-old son and he loves his nails painted red. And she goes get her nails done, takes them, and he gets his nails painted. And she, and she says I love this, this is something that I like to do as a girl that I get to share with my son. Yeah. And he's too young to know, he's too young to be, scolded by it or made fun of because he's only 2, and so, he has another 10 years till he's 12, praying that maybe, I don't know.
I think there are changes. Though.
Yeah, there's some huge progress that has been made. That's just,
My son's dyed his hair purple and pink and, there's a lot of kids questioning gender identity even at his age. So I think there are changes. There is greater acceptance.
And we also have those protections now in the Canadian Human Rights Act and the Criminal Code for gender identity and also gender expression. Yeah. And I think back to when I was probably been almost a decade ago now, but before my transition, I had long hair. I used to paint my nails, and I used to get my boss giving me, these talking tos for doing that. You're not representing the business properly. And that wouldn't fly these days. You can't get away with that.
No.
But that also brings me to a question, because our Canadian Human Rights Act is intended to protect people from discrimination based off of, like I said, gender identity and gender expression, and also sex. So why is it that those types of protections don't just end sexism?
I think it's just so deeply ingrained in society and has been for so long. Like, I look at, like, my son, up until about 2 years ago now, a year, he had shoulder length hair, and my dad, who, is your typical 74-year-old white male who always grew up very privileged, he accepted it to a certain degree, but couldn't help himself but make these comments.
Yeah.
And honestly couldn't grasp why a boy would want to have hair that long.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what human rights are passed, he's still going to feel that way and still feel empowered enough to make comments about it. So I think it's so long.
It's so, it goes so deep. And things like that are so, I think they're such like superficial things that it's like, sure, yeah, cool. Like, oh, they want to do that? By all means, doesn't affect me. Go and do it. But it's like it really, it's like, if you look at it like a tree, I feel like that's one branch, right? It goes down and down and down and down and down. You can cut the branch off, but it's not really going to grow back, like it goes down like so far in the ground that there's deep roots that it's like, it's just something that like, it's almost like you would have to literally cut the whole tree and replant it and rebuild everything from like the ground up, where sexism is, it's not like, it doesn't exist,
right? Because it's just going to it's
just going to keep growing. Yeah. It's like you can switch to another branch and another branch, and you can, trim it for a bit. Maybe it'll grow some flowers, like it changes, but like it's still going to be connected to like the root.
Yeah. And I guess to your point as well, if you have a situation where, your father's making comments about your child's long hair, that's not, getting to the level of a human rights complaint or anything like that. So why would the Human Rights Act have any impact on that?
It's those small little, I guess, sort of micro aggressions that are deeply ingrained in a lot of people. And I think it's just, it takes time. It's such a brutal way to say it, but that generation that sort of really holds these ideas, they eventually will pass on. And you would hope that, I don't have the same feelings as my father. So, as the different generations keep coming up, they'll pass on, you hope, sort of these more equal and open-minded ideas to their children and to the society around them. But it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so we have come far. Can you imagine having a unisex bathroom at your school when you were growing up?
No, I would have loved that.
I mean, but I mean, like that, things like that would just, you couldn't even think of that happening even,
Well, in college, they had, unisex bathrooms.
Yeah.
You could take showers together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think that there's that level of pushback that you get when you try to make changes like that. So there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that you're not slipping backwards as well.
Yeah.
You don't, try to push for something and then get blowback for it and then fall backwards. It's sort of that two-step forward, one step back situation.
It totally is. And that's kind of the dance you have to do. Because, for whatever reason, the human race is incredibly stubborn. Like, if you do anything too quick, we just like, no, can't have that. So you kind of have to sneak it past slowly, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, to have a very extreme example, I think about World War II and the Nazis in Germany, how they targeted queer folks, for instance. And not long before that, it wasn't actually that big of a deal to be queer in Germany, from what I understand. And, things then devolved, essentially. It's I don't think we can just assume that we're on an upwards trajectory.
There'll always be sort of a backslide at times.
Yeah.
But you have to just keep pushing. That's the thing. You can't you always have to be, I guess, on guard. You may think that you're done with an issue, but it will come up again, and you just have to keep saying, "Oh, like, we're not doing that anymore."
And and that's one thing that I actually noticed, just like with my personal experience, like lately, is with everything that happened with that situation with my ex-boyfriend in the past, and me being basically like shunned from any social thing that was going to be like a guy-girl thing, like even girlfriends of guys, like girls I was friends with, if they had a boyfriend, all of a sudden I was like, can't trust this person, right? I was 23, like this is like 6 years ago. And this is in Richmond, moved out of Richmond into Vancouver last year. And one of my friends introduced me to her brother, and I became friends with a lot of her brother's friends. And I started like seeing somebody in that group. And while we were seeing each other, everything was good in that sense. He had one of his friends who had done a lot of just things that I don't think were very smart decisions. Like, I think there was 3 different guys' girlfriends in that group that he would, hit on, be sneaky with, text one of them, say, "Oh, I know you won't like me." They had to put him in their place. Another one would like hit on these girls, and their boyfriends were there, right? He got a pass. He's still such good friends in that group. He's like still considered one of the main component friends in that group. Meanwhile, I had a conversation, like maybe a couple conversations while I was single, not even in a relationship with this guy, single, that he deemed to be inappropriate. And yesterday, I have not seen him. I've talked to him one time in 8 months. Yesterday, I reached out to him to see how he was doing. And he said, "Lose my number, you filthy, see you next Tuesday."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Meanwhile, his friend that he gives the benefit of the doubt to on 4 different occasions has been inappropriate with other guys' girlfriends in the group. Nothing. Like maybe he gets like a "don't do this," or like
boys will be boys.
Boys will be freaking boys. And it pisses me off because it's like, this is somebody that I, 1, really cared about. 2, like I maybe can be like, maybe my friendly can be like, can come off as like inappropriate. It's not like, it's never my intent to. I'm so used to being around guys, and with my mom, she can be really friendly. That can her commentary can come off like really flirty, and it's not an intention, but like I get called the filthy "see you next Tuesday" instead of saying, "Hey, Alex, this is a little inappropriate." Meanwhile, there's a guy who's physically being inappropriate and nothing happens to him. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad this happened yesterday because I was really excited to bring it up today. I was like, this is,
the silver lining.
Yeah, silver lining. He gets called out, but no, just kidding.
The virgin whore sort of dichotomy is that women are still expected to be sort of these chaste, innocent beings.
Yeah.
But also, be down for it whenever a man wants it. It's still a very
classy on the streets, freak in the sheets, basically. Like
Yeah, and actually one of the questions I had here was, why is it that men are praised as players when they sleep with a lot of women, but women are called skanks, whores, and sluts for participating in the same behavior?
Well, and that's just it. Unless a man is sleeping with another man, there was a woman there at the exact same time.
It might not even be the same behavior either. It could just be something that they don't like. They're jealous of. Their pride gets hit because their girlfriend or a girl that they care about is having a conversation with a guy that they don't like. Suddenly they're a whore and a skank, but then they can turn around and go and have sex with somebody else. Right?
It's a double standard.
It's such a freaking double standard. I hate you men. No, I'm just kidding. I love you men as equally as women.
I'll use that as their intro for the podcast.
What time is it? How long did it get before we made that statement?
I was warming up to it.
I'll message you when I'm editing this, let you know.
It's still moving though. I mean, and that's always been the case. Mm-hmm. And that, I think maybe there's a little bit more acceptance of women, having their own sexual agency and not having to be in a relationship and have sex purely for pleasure. I think that is changing. Yeah. A bit.
Polyamory is becoming like
it is, and people are
thing from on both sides. Yeah.
open and sort of seeing them too, like, for the teenagers I know, being in a relationship, like, isn't the end all be all. They don't feel the need to necessarily, couple up and
That's true, yeah.
and be a little bit more open to experimentation.
Yeah.
So that does give me hope, but it is true.
As long as they're, if they're going to experiment or, and be polyamorous or kind of like go about that, make sure that the people you are pursuing are also like that, because you're going to get to a point where it's like you're going to pursue something that you guys can both go into it saying this is 100% casual, no expectations, nothing.
Right.
And then one person can catch more feelings, or you guys could both catch feelings. And then suddenly we're not in a relationship, but you can't do this, you can't do that. Like, oh, you're being so slutty, you're this, like you're, so it's make sure that it's like having that open line of communication where it's like, if you're going to have that fluidity, you both are having that fluidity.
Yeah. Would be. Yeah. I don't know, maybe are men just so fragile that they can't handle
their egos,
a woman they've been with being with somebody else.
No, but they want to think of themselves being with a lot of someone else's. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's that double standard again.
It is, yeah. My ex-boyfriend, when we had because I had a very experimental youth, I'd say. And when I got with my first relationship, he'd maybe slept with 4 or 5 people. I had slept a lot more than that. And I would overhear him talk about it with his friends, and he'd be like, oh yeah, my girlfriend was such a slut, and this and that. And it's like, I'm sure you would love it though if I'd had sex with only 4 people and you had sex with 14.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It seems like we've talked about sexism a lot from the lens of men and women and maybe heterosexual relationships. But I'm wondering how sexism affects someone who's non-binary, for instance. It's kind of a hard one for any of us to talk about because none of us are non-binary.
None of us are non-binary, yeah.
But it does kind of, I think, provide a unique perspective on sexism. Like, if you can't tell what gender someone is, how are you treating them, or how are they being treated by society?
I mean, in a perfect world, you would be like, perfect. Like, I foiled the system. Like, you would think you'd be in that sweet spot of nobody being able to discriminate towards you. But I think, what I've perhaps seen in a limited way is it almost seems to be they're sort of relegated to this no man's land, where it's almost like seen as an affront that they don't present a firm gender, that you can't put them in a little box that you're used to doing.
Right. And I think the interesting thing is it's a totally meaningless box, but because we treat people differently based on their gender, or society as a whole treats people differently based on their gender, when you are confronted with someone who doesn't fit into those 2 categories of how you are conditioned to treat people, you don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah, your little brain is just blown. You don't know what to do, because that is how we've all been conditioned to sort of check off the boxes. And when you can't do that, I think you're sort of left floundering a little bit. I think a lot of people are. We need to move past that. We shouldn't, the way we interact with a person should have nothing to do with, what we perceive as in their pants, basically.
And you know what? And I think that I've always tried to treat everyone the same. If I'm liquored up, I will hit on men and women. It does not I'll flirt with I will flirt with anyone. And from that standpoint, that's cool that I treat everyone the same. But if you're, I don't know why I'm going to play, if you're a man, just at the same time, and the girl that you like is treating men and women the same, instantly it's like, oh, you're being friendly with a woman, but you can't be friendly with a man at the same time because it's inappropriate. So when you have, and I've had had a couple, I've had people over at my house a couple times, and if they were non-binary, and did not matter if with long hair, cool, because they look like a woman, right? It's strictly a woman. Short hair, no, it's inappropriate because they look more like a man.
Interesting.
So they look at they'll say, yeah, sure, whatever. Unless you look if you look more like one than the other. If you look like a man, but you're non-binary, still, a lot of people still view you as a man who's confused, You're a woman who's non-binary, you're a woman that's looking for attention.
Right. I guess that's why there's, I see a lot of posts from non-binary people when they get this sort of sense of euphoria when a person doesn't know how to gender them. They're going, you know, they're trying to put the pieces together going, okay, long hair, woman, but beard, not woman. I'm so confused.
Yeah.
And that's like euphoria for them, right? Like that's exactly where they want to be. They don't want you to be able to perceive them as a man or a woman because they're not a man or a woman.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I can't imagine what that would feel like. I'm somebody that is treated as a woman.
Yeah.
That's how I'm perceived. That's how I identify. You know, and I think that would be such a wonderful thing to have interactions with people and not think, is it because I'm a woman? Are they acting this way? Like to have that taken out of the equation.
Yeah.
You know, as difficult as it is for them to get that, I would think, yeah, that euphoria when they do have that interaction when somebody is stumped, you know, that must be very powerful.
I think
kind of like how my drawing.
for anyone who's listening to this and not seeing the video portion.
Long hair on one side and short on the other, and then I just this man in there.
It's kind of like a Venn diagram to me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
Or a bubble. What are the bubble
man
charts?
and then long hair, short hair. I don't know why I felt this is important to show.
Well, sort of on that note of how you're being perceived, I think about when I go to hardware stores. And if I just dress in my normal street clothes at a hardware store, I almost immediately get an employee coming up to me going, ma'am, can I help you out? Like, do you need anything?
Right.
When I go in my construction clothes, which are left over from my previous life, sometimes people perceive me as a woman, sometimes people perceive me as a man. Doesn't really matter to me too much in that context, but I find it curious because when they perceive me as a man, they don't offer that help.
Right.
They think I'm going to know exactly what I'm doing in a hardware store because that's where I belong.
Right.
But
You just have this innate knowledge.
Yeah.
right. And it's so funny. Like I actually much prefer the interactions I have in hardware stores when people treat me as a woman because I get good customer service.
Yeah,
That's true. That's pretty true. Although on the flip side, I do find occasionally I'm just like, please, just leave me alone.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
true.
yeah.
I actually know what I'm here
Yeah.
for. Like, I
Also, the
don't-
mansplaining is
Oh, God.
difficult
Yeah,
at
that's why I
times.
like looking bad in an Uber because the guy's gonna leave me alone. I was on my way here today, right? Because I knew this was gonna be on camera, and I was like, I can't roll out of bed, and and so I'm on my way here, and I think it was at like where the Kootenai Loop is, like Skeena and Hastings. And this one guy comes up to me and says, "Can I have your number? I think you're really cute." And I'm like, "Damn it! Like, couldn't I just rolled out of bed and just like if I just rolled out of bed, like no, everyone would leave me alone." I almost want people to think that I'm like have no gender or
It's just a compliment.
it's a compliment.
Catcalling's just a compliment.
But it wasn't just a compliment because we were getting on the same bus. So I wanted to have conversations the whole time about this boyfriend that I made up on the top of my head because it was that's a thing.
That's
like,
something men don't have to do.
no, they don't have to lie and say like, no, I have a girlfriend. Like I had to lie and say like, I had a boyfriend because I didn't want to have to like sit there and justify why I didn't want to take his phone number. It was just, I have a boyfriend, not interested. Like, lead me to the front of this bus.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Like a man would never have to do that.
Well, I mean, most girls are probably not going to be like that forward either, right? Like, it's pretty rare. Like, maybe like I've been with like my group of friends and I've gone out to one guy and said, "Oh, I think you're super good looking." But I have like my friends there. Like, I have my like back, right? There's never been a time that I've seen a guy on the street and I said, "Oh, hey, by the way, I think you're like really good looking." I've seen guys on the street that I thought were really good looking and we're kind of making eyes at each other. And I wanted to tell him, like, there's this guy that lives in my building and I'm moving out of the building in 2 weeks and I really want to see him at his car just so I can like go and tell him so it's done. But it's more common for a guy to sit there and say like, "Oh, hey, like you're cute, gonna get your number, this and that." And if a girl says no, it's either, "Oh, cool, I understand," or "Why? Like, what's wrong with me? Like what's so good about you that you don't want my number?"
Yeah, it seems like there's a confidence that's born out of power dynamics.
So very much so.
Like, I have the confidence to go and talk to you because I'm in this position of power, being the man in the situation.
Yeah.
So you've explained quite a few examples of like sexism that you've personally experienced.
Yeah.
Do you have some examples that you'd like to share?
Please share your example. Mine's coming from like a millennial example point.
Yeah, but I mean, like a lot of it is usual. Like I remember, when I was younger and a teen, always sort of having, like you said, like you always had to analyze a situation. Like, I can't talk to this person because they have, a girlfriend, or I can't talk to this, person because they have a crush on somebody. So there is always that judgment. I think for myself,
stop being friends with so-and-so because I like him now. You know?
There's always going to be that. I think for myself, I really, I didn't really start to feel it overtly until I was older and sort of around when I had my first child, because I was working in television at the time. So that was an interesting process to become very largely pregnant on camera, that men and women felt this permission to, call in or write in and make comments on how my body was changing and how they did not like to see it, and that it was not something they wanted to be subjected to. And then after I had my daughter, sort of being brought in to make sure I'd lost the pregnancy weight, before they would think about putting me back on TV. That was hard, and that was sort of a jolt to realize, that so much of my worth in my career was tied up in how I looked. So that was difficult, and it was difficult too, being a new mom to a daughter and sort of confronting this and realizing like, oh shit, now I gotta figure this all out while I'm raising her.
Because you want to be a good example for a daughter as well.
You
right?
do, and that there, a lot goes into that. So for me, it definitely it came up a lot more career-wise, and I came up, in my young 20s, working with a lot of successful, white men in their 50s that, felt that they were allowed to say anything to me, on and off air. And if you took offense to it, it was like, I'm just joking. I have a daughter your age.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, okay.
That doesn't make it better.
It actually makes it worse.
Exactly.
Like that's going to be your humor.
Yeah.
At least if you feel that way, at least say it so I can call you an ass and like move on with my day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is. It's. I think most women have experienced that, those uncomfortable comments that you let go because it's going to impact, your work situation or wanting to get ahead. So for me, it definitely came up a lot more career-wise, and it's sad. That's how it still is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, you would expect things like that to get better over time, and then you end up with the Lisa Laflamme situation.
I was just going to say, I mean, like, I don't know why it shocked me, but it did, because I guess there was a small part of me that thought, well, at least if you get successful enough, you can not be subjected to that, and to see her, be cut down so quickly, seemingly because of her age, and not just her age, her audacity to take control of situations at work and to use her extensive knowledge and experience to make decisions that would impact the newsroom. Like that was tough. That it just was very infuriating and just made me really sad to know I'm nowhere near that level in my career. Yeah. And to know that it would still happen to somebody like her, it's just really disheartening. Yeah.
So you think there was also that factor of people feeling threatened by her as a powerful woman?
And from what I am hearing, that was something that, not just maybe certain management, but also certain, members of the newsroom she was in didn't like that she was unapologetic about having a very successful career and because of her career longevity had a lot of knowledge and knew how stories should get covered and didn't feel the need to ask a man's permission or a man what they thought the direction of a story should be. It was her and her female producer who was also incredibly knowledgeable and experienced, and the two of them that just seemed to be too much for a lot of people to take.
Yeah. And I mean, I can think of so many, old white guys that are on TV, and I can't think of any old women that are on TV.
And, you see men that are not traditionally attractive, that don't, adhere to that stereotypical, handsome news anchor. You see
Jay Leno.
Yeah.
Not to call anybody out, but...
and that should be the case. You should be able to have a successful career in any arena.
Yeah.
Whether you are, I don't even want to say overweight. You're a larger size.
Yeah.
How dare you actually go
festively plump
bigger than you once were, or lose your hair.
Well, and if you look at like Kirstie Alley, for example, right? She did so much film until she put on weight, and then the only thing you ever saw her in was Jenny Craig commercials. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I never really saw her in anything after that, right? I remember growing up, and I had no idea who she was. And my mom would be like, "Oh, that's so sad. Like, look how much weight she's put on." And I was like 10, so I had no idea who that was, right? But that was the thing back then. It wasn't just like, unless you were Queen Latifah, if you put on weight, it was like this taboo thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much film did she miss out on actually getting to do because she put on weight? Yeah. Or because she got older and put on weight.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like you said, your mom saying, "Oh, that's so sad." Like I grew up, my mom was probably on a diet my entire life.
Yeah. My mom was very health conscious too.
You know, had been told that she was too big, and that she should try and stay, more slim.
Yeah, my mom owns the weight stuff now. Like, she's so proud of me, like watching how I like present myself with my like thickness. She's like, she is really proud, and she even says that, and this is a big deal because you know her. She even says that I'm starting to be her like role model in terms of that stuff.
That's cool.
I know. She's so proud, and I think it. Sometimes it takes actually being put in that position yourself to like say like, okay, like my view is going to change now of like how I'm seeing other people, or how I think society should be seeing other people, because I'm changing the way that I see myself.
I've also noticed a huge shift in how my mom approaches weight. It seems like, I don't know, maybe there was, this education that happened in the last decade or so, but I grew up as a cross-country skier, and I was very fit for most of my life. So the moment I started gaining any weight, tons of people commented on it. Yeah. And it wasn't even that I've ever been sort of large per se, but just a few extra pounds, and suddenly I was getting comments constantly about it, and then becoming really insecure. And I've noticed that it's been many years since my mom's even commented on my weight at all. Yeah. And I think part of that is just recognizing that it doesn't help to comment on someone's weight. Like, you're not going to encourage them to lose weight. You're just going to make them feel bad.
Like, for me, if I have like, I can't say like I would love to be a bigger person and say that this hasn't been affecting me lately, but like I can't say like I've just lost 60 pounds, in the last 6 months. So I'm really proud of myself in terms of that. I'm not minding all of the like comments of people I grew up with message me saying, "Hey, you look so good. Like, can I take you out?" I'm not minding when I walk in, my mom saying, "Hey, skinny girl," like I don't mind any of that. It sucks that other people's opinions of me are making me feel better. But it's a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm. It is. There's
you want people to comment on when you look good, but you don't want them to comment when you look bad.
Yeah. Well, I've also had instances where I've been like, "Yes, I've lost like 20 pounds and I'm in really good shape."
The first thing I said to you today was like, "Look how good I look."
But I'll also get people when I've said things like that, and they'll go, "Really?"
Yeah.
Like, well,
I hate it.
Great. Why? Why do I even bother?
I know. It's like, I was like, so how do I lost 30 pounds, but I can't really tell. I'm like, can you not lie?
Just say I look great.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, you look so, like Alyssa has it down. That's my best friend. She has it down all the time. My brother was trained from like 10 on. Who's the thinnest, most beautiful? And it so sucks that I have to say the word thin, but when you grow up heavy, it becomes a compliment word when you you look smaller. But my brother all the time, like, who's the most thinnest, supermodelist looking girl in the world? You. And I'm like, that's right. And this is when I'm like hitting, like, this is when I was like over 300 pounds of just like depression weight coming on, and he was like this constant reminder that I was in his eyes, supermodel. Mm-hmm. I miss him. He needs to move back. I went to parent-teacher conferences for him on the East Coast, so he should come back and tell me I look good.
I think that's important, though, like the family thing. Mm-hmm. like, I think you would honestly have to put a gun to my head before I would make a comment on my daughter's size of any shape or you know, what she's wearing. And I don't step in often when my son and my daughter are having fights, unless it's like physical. But, you know, if he...
Who wins? Like the physical.
Really, she would. There's a
4-year age difference. But you know what? I feel like that's always good when there's an older, when it's the female that's older, because you want to be like, you always want your brother and his friends to be like a little bit afraid of you. You know?
They definitely are. But
switches those power dynamics.
Yeah, switch the power dynamics over. Yeah, get it when you can. Yeah.
Nope. Like, do not say that. Like, you can say a lot of insults. Be creative, have at her, but like that's
don't come up. Don't body
that is
shame
not something that you do. Like, don't ever say that.
I think you keep the appearance out of it too. And normally, if somebody's going to come at you for your appearance, it's usually because they feel insecure about their own.
Well, that's
right. It's like that's what would hurt them, so that's what they're going to throw at you.
Yeah.
Right. Like the amount of times I've been called like a fat bitch. It's like, okay, I am a bitch and I am fat. What's your point? Like, what else you got? You know, it's like, so do you not feel like, do you think that you're a bitch and are you insecure with your appearance? Because that's all I'm getting when somebody comes at me that way, you know?
You've got that power and just owning it. Basically.
Yeah, like, sure, I still look good, you know? How I look on the outside doesn't define who I am on the inside, you know? I don't know how many times I've heard from guys, like, you know, normally I'm attracted to girls who are thinner, but I find you so attractive because the way that you carry yourself. Fan-freaking-tastic. That's my favorite compliment. You can call me like a blimp and still tell me that, and it's the best thing I've ever heard. Because I want to be judged for my person, not my gender, not my weight, you know?
I think not giving people the power to be able to affect you is powerful in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's hard.
People used to call me weird all the time growing up. And at I am weird. And
weird
there was a point where I started saying thank you.
Yeah.
Anytime someone said you're weird, I would just say thank you. Yeah. And they didn't know what to do with it.
They've got nothing then.
It's no longer an insult.
I know, it's true. And you sort of those things that, you know, people will pick on, like if you just decide that that's okay. And I think that, you know, especially like, I think men have a hard time with that. Like they have a hard time when you take away, you know, if they call you a slut or they call you fat or they call you, you know, unsexy. How terrible is that? Like if you're just like, great. Don't care.
You should
like,
call yourself a fat slut in front of a guy. Like one day I see a guy, aren't I such a fat slut? And they just won't know what to say. They'll be like, of course not, until they're pissed off at you. But then can they call you it? Because you've already called it yourself. Like,
you've taken it away from them.
You're taking it away. You're taking the power away.
Yeah.
Damn, I'm such a fat slut today. Like,
get your shirt with that.
Okay, so just to shift directions completely, why does the wage cap still exist?
Oh,
I don't know.
I don't know.
It doesn't here.
No, but like
my wage was established by what's that expression? Nepotism. That was like my mom said that too. She's like, I don't even know what sexism is because, you know, like she got the company from her mom. You know, my
she was saying she grew up in a matriarch.
My grandma was the businesswoman, right? But let's call a spade a spade. We both got to where we were because of nepotism. No offense, Mom, I love you, but you know.
This would be the one podcast she watches.
I don't know why it still exists. It shouldn't. Like we all, it's not like it's a dirty secret. We all know about it, men and women. And I suppose, like, I think one thing that I said to my husband once that kind of, you know, shocked him is we were sort of talking about it. And I was like, you do realize you would have to give up some of your money to help pay for a woman to get an equal wages.
I think that's where they're is alimony based off of gender? Or is it based off of how much money you make? Like if one person makes more money than the other person, right?
I think it's usually based off of who makes the most money, which 9 times out of 10 is quite often the man.
Yeah, not in my family. Even my dad's side of the family, my stepmom she wears the pants. I hate that expression.
Well, exactly.
But we're talking about sexism. So my stepmom wears the pants. My dad, she would be lost with it. My dad, he is the greatest housewife, but you know, she wears the pants. She makes the most money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was a time when women couldn't wear pants.
Right.
No, they couldn't. Yeah. I saw Grease too. You weren't all allowed to wear pants at school.
Yeah, but I think that's hard. Like, it's not enough for men to say, like, you're right, this is wrong. They actually will have to take a little bit of a hit. And until they're willing to do that, I don't think we're going to see that massive shift. And that, it's hard to give up power.
Yeah.
It really is, in any sense. So, I think that's a sticking point that a lot of men who consider themselves allies don't realize that they will.
They're allies to a certain extent, they're allies as long as they don't have to do anything differently.
Yeah, sometimes.
It's like I give you the power to do whatever you want, just as long as it doesn't involve me losing any of mine, know?
Yeah. When you're in a position of privilege, equality feels like oppression, right?
Absolutely.
That's kind of the mentality there. But I think one of the things that really holds us back from addressing the wage gap, because technically you're not allowed to pay women less than men.
No,
it's illegal.
So, it shouldn't
You're also
exist.
not allowed to not hire somebody based off of their appearance either.
Right.
But,
so all these things happen, and I think a big problem is a lack of transparency. Like, if everyone knew what each other's wages was,
Exactly.
you wouldn't be able to get away with that.
No, it's still deemed as sort of tacky and taboo. Like, I probably would never, go to a colleague and be like, so what do you make? I can kind of guess, depending on, we're in a union and we have different pay levels. Like, I can kind of guess, but there's always wiggle room.
I would much rather somebody ask me how much I made than ask me how much I weighed last week,
Yeah.
I will just offer up how much I make because I believe in that transparency.
I think I asked you one day, I was talking to one of my friends, I was explaining the kinds of questions that are inappropriate to ask somebody who's transitioned. And I'm like, you don't go and ask them what they had changed. And I even said to you, I was like, apparently, you don't ask it. It's almost like asking how much somebody made. You're like, well, I would so much rather somebody ask me how much I made last year than ask me what part of my body I changed.
Yeah, I will not
and then told me what you made last year.
I will not talk about surgeries I may or may not have had because I think it invalidates other trans people.
Yeah.
I don't actually think that because I think people should be able to, should be free to talk about it
but it's your
regardless.
Business, right? If I have my appendix removed, I'm not going to walk around showing people the scar if I'm not comfortable. I think it's not really the same thing, but.
Yeah, I just think the problem is you're no more or less of a woman if you've had or haven't had surgery in my mind. So if I'm going to say I've had these surgeries or haven't had these surgeries, to me, it's almost like I'm trying to say I'm, more of a woman because of X, Y, Z. And I don't believe in that. So I just don't do it. But when it comes to wages, I think it's really good to have that transparency and to go, wait a second, why is my coworker making double what I'm making for doing the same job? This doesn't make sense. It happens all the time with actors, right? We find out that a movie was filmed and the men are making so much more money, right?
There's shame too, because I think for some women to say it out loud, to admit it, to admit that you have allowed yourself to be devalued is difficult. It's a difficult conversation to have with yourself and to realize that you are still playing a part in this setup, in society. So I think there's that. Yeah. There needs to be more transparency, but also people need to be feel more comfortable being transparent.
Oh, sorry. I just remembered something. I was seeing a guy also a year ago before the other guy. And we only saw each other for about 3 weeks. I think I told you about him. It was this guy named Justin. He doesn't live here anymore. He lives in Ireland. We can include the name. He lives in Ireland anymore. He's not here.
Okay.
He moved to Ireland to be with his new girlfriend. He does things like that. But I lost, when I left this job here, I took my work email off. All my contacts went away. Right. So I've been I don't delete text messages since I got my phone. And I got my phone in 2020. So I'm going to the bottom and I'm finding these conversations I'm having with these people. I have no idea who they are. It's so entertaining. So I texted saying hey, who are you? I just read these messages. I have this girl, and I could probably look up the messages that he's now with, his wife. Actually, I am going to look up messages.
It's great podcast content.
This is great podcast content. This is what I ended up saying. This is what I ended up saying to her. Essentially, because I just was in disbelief how much she was just coming after my appearance and stuff. What she said was, delete my husband's number, keep it that way. He's trying to remove you from his memory, all of this stuff. she was just going like so below the belt with a lot of things that she was saying. You're the biggest mistake of his life. Didn't he sneak out and come back? You weren't an ex-girlfriend, you were a drunken mistake. A lot of stuff about my womanly areas. A lot of just inappropriate things. This is what this is a long time, a lot of messages. It would take a lot of time. This is what I said back. I said, it doesn't matter how many times you insult my appearance or my body or my hygiene. On the surface, it might make you feel more attractive and confident from on the outside looking, and it's just really sad because women who are confident in themselves and their lives and their relationships don't try to tear down other women just for being in an insignificant relationship with their spouse. It was a 3-week thing. Like, that's all it was. My self-confidence made Justin feel insecure because Justin is insecure. Unfortunately, he found somebody more insecure than he is. Shame. That was my response.
It was a fairly well-measured response given the situation.
Yeah, it's like, she could have said, oh, hey, girl, like, this is Justin. Like, now that you know, if she didn't want me talking to her husband, we broke up a year ago. Broke up a year ago. Apparently he's married in Ireland now.
All right, insecure Justin from Ireland. He's been called out.
But that's the thing is, it's like, why, like when women come after other women, it's usually, I think they're probably feeling pretty insecure. Yeah. Either that or they don't trust themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, they think they think other women are going to go do with their man what they would do with other women's men.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
projection.
A lot of it is
it's projection, yeah.
Yeah, projection, but I know when I have been on the offense, and that is the first thing you think, like, what could I do to hurt you? To tear you down is the thing that, would hurt me the most. Like,
it's just come after somebody's appearance.
That's how your mindset works. And it's sad, but.
As long as as people, this isn't even a woman thing. This isn't even like a gender versus gender thing. I think at the end of the day, like, as long as you pinpoint the things within yourself that you love about yourself, as long as you acknowledge that you're like, that you are loved, that you love yourself, that you're a great person, everything else is just like white noise that can just be tuned out. Mm-hmm. I listen to white noise when I'm sleeping. When I sleep, it's like out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, self-love is definitely one of those, I guess, catchphrases that people use all the time, but it's also something that has really helped me be more confident and not let the criticisms or the transphobia in particular that I face affect me, because I'm just confident in who I am.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You've been researching family dynamics for a while as a parenting columnist. What have you noticed about how sexism impacts families?
Overwhelmingly, even prior to the pandemic, but especially throughout the pandemic, as women are expected to pull up, perform, take on more duties, give up parts of themselves in ways that fathers are never asked to do, in the family themselves, in their work environments, in their larger family dynamic. I hear from so many moms that just feel like they are called on to do more and more while receiving less and less. And it's hard because as a mom, to hear that constantly and also realize that within my family, I have also been expected to do that. It's discouraging. Mm-hmm. And it's discouraging to know so many other mothers are at that point of feeling just a bit broken. That no matter what they do, it's still not enough. And that they are still expected to excel in so many different areas of their life.
So it's almost like we have got the progress piece where women can now go out and get jobs and be sort of more independent in that sense. Yep. But at the same time, are still expected to fulfill those sort of 1950s housewife roles.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that there's shame from other mothers. If you say, oh, well, screw it. I hired a housekeeper, or I rely on a nanny for my newborn. There's always that judgment from other mothers, because we we're expected, I think, to take on so much and to do so well, but we also expect it out of ourselves. Like we don't want to admit that we're failing in any way. Mm-hmm. And so,
do you think because of how women are raised, like it's left over from that time period?
There is a bit of that. Like I know my mom has passed away, but my mom was a very traditional wife. And so my dad never cooked, he never cleaned, he never did any of those, domestic duties. And my mom, she had 2 daughters, so we were taught that this was what we must do. And she was very uncomfortable, with the mere suggestion that I would get my husband to do laundry, or that my, husband would be left a meal to heat up because I was working late.
Yeah.
So that, I think there is definitely a holdover from that. And it's just that whole sort of superwoman notion that we somehow have said, women are so great, we're great. We can do a lot. We shouldn't have to do it, though.
Yeah.
Just because somebody can do something, women are incredible at, multitasking and taking care and being nurturing and having a bunch of, plates spinning at once. It doesn't mean we should have to. But I would say that has been the biggest one, is realizing that moms in particular are still feeling so much pressure and have so much expectation put on them. Mm-hmm. And I feel that.
Yeah, well, it's too bad that that's still the case. And I guess we just have to keep plugging away at creating change to make it better for every generation afterwards.
Change within yourself and your own life. It's like, it's such a great start.
I have a hard time admitting that I can't do something or delegating. So I think, my biggest role is to just try to make sure my children are, equally lazy, or that they both learn how to do laundry. That they are all playing, because I'm comfortable sometimes with just by the nature of the hours that my husband and I work. I am tasked. I am the one that does the majority of the cooking and the cleaning, because I'm home earlier from work, and I'm cognizant of the fact that is far more sort of traditional setup that I would like. At least
that's the reason why, though, and not he makes more money, so you're expected to do this, right? Like, I think if tables had turned, and you were probably, he'd probably do a lot of it, you know? My dad does all of it because my dad complains when people don't help and then doesn't want you to,
Different reasonings here.
No, we do it wrong, Gosh forbid I don't unfold my pants properly when he does my laundry. When his 29-year-old daughter comes over and he does all of her laundry, which is why I do it, because he picks it up, drops it off, folds it.
Nice.
It's like $4 a load in my apartment building. Okay, that adds up.
You're getting good value out of your dad then.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also, from me in a career standpoint, I am in between, I'm just sort of taking a break from working right now. I'm just trying to focus on mental health, because the way I see it as if you feel like your brain needs work, it's almost like it's almost like when you go on a diet for your body. I'm kind of on a diet for my mind right now. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot easier for me to apply things that I want changed to my life when I don't work versus a job like yours, where in the business that you're in, you just can't help but have the gender bias. Yeah. It's just, you have a lot more of a public platform than me, who sleeps until 11 o'clock and that's my life right now. Collects EI and sits in my parents' hot tub and
So I think it's time now for me to ask you both the unanswerable question.
Oh, okay.
How do we dismantle sexism?
Well, have I got a few?
So I'm just thinking, we try to end each episode with sort of some parting words, what the listeners can maybe do in their own lives to make the world a better place.
Don't judge women for being women. That was meant to be a question. That was meant to be an answer. That wasn't literal.
Yeah.
It's so much easier said than done.
I think it's something that's really good to strive for, though.
It is. It's great to strive for, but I think that it's like I said, this is a tree. It's a tree. You can't just not judge. You can't just I think that there's so many underlying things that come out of it.
I had this come up in one of the podcasts. It might have been the I think it was one of our podcasts on finances, where I said that we will probably never live in an equitable world. Is it possible for humans to arrange ourselves in a way that's completely equitable? Probably not. Does that mean we shouldn't be striving for it? Of course not. Like, we always need to be working towards making our society more equitable. So, what are some steps you think that maybe we can take to achieve that?
Placing worth on things other than who we are physically. I think I'd rather be put, more stock in somebody's kindness and humor and intelligence than who they were born as.
Yeah.
And I think for myself, it's just constantly challenging, myself and the way I act, and wondering if, am I doing this because it's something I want, or is it something I feel I have to do as a woman? And sort of dismantling that inside myself, while at the same time being in that, unique and privileged position of having a child that is female and one that is male, and they both identify with that. Being able to raise them as not equally, but like, as we said, like, I'm always going to have to give my daughter, I have to tell my daughter different things when she leaves the house than I have to tell my son. But making sure they both go out into the world, watching out for themselves and for other people. I think if we can sort of just continue to have this idea that we need to just watch out for each other, that's how we might start to see some change. Yeah. Not just, with sexism or violence or anything, just, I think we just need to keep pushing, with the younger generations. I kind of consider the older generations a lost cause. I don't put a lot of energy into trying to change people, like, say, my dad. I'm going to put my energy into my children and somebody younger than myself, because I know they will have a greater impact as they grow on.
You're not trying to teach an old dog new tricks.
Gave up on that a very long time.
Is there anything else that either of you wanted to add to the discussion before we wrap this up?
Yeah, sure. So with what you just asked, I think a couple of things that I would try to keep in my mind is, if I feel like this is, and that this is such a passionate subject for me, right? Don't waver on it. Like, don't just say, I've had enough, like, of this battle on my own. Like, I'm just going to, like, do whatever, just tell everyone what they want to hear. Because I feel like that's actually going to, backtrack the effort. Also, what I always try to keep in mind is, I don't have any children, right? But one thing I always try to keep in mind is, if I had a daughter and I was watching her get treated the way that I've been treated by guys, is it something that I would be okay with? Right? And it's like, if I'm experiencing, like, a lot of gender bias, what would I tell my kid? Like, what would I want her, like, what I want if I'm, like, up here looking down at what she's experiencing, what's something that I would want her to know, and then just try to tell that to myself.
Yeah.
So be the person that you needed when you were a kid, basically.
And I've told that to my mom, with her, like, with her relationships and their dynamics. I said, like, and when she asked me my opinion, I'm like, well, I can't give you my opinion, but all I can ask you is, what if this were me and you were watching me? Like, would you be okay with it? She would start crying. She's very emotional.
Such a woman.
Such a woman. It's this funny thing now that I'll say something and she'll go, oh, I'm like, oh, are you going to cry? And she's like, shut up. I just try to say, like, is this something that you would be okay with watching me go through? And she's like, absolutely not. Yeah. And I'm like, well, there's your answer.
No, and that's very true.
And it's better than me saying what you're doing is wrong, or what guys are doing is wrong, because I'm not God. I'm not a sensei. I'm nothing like that. All I know is, like, what bothers me, and, like, things that, like, I feel strongly about. And, that's all I can do is stand by that. I'm not entitled at all to be able to decide whether other people are doing something wrong or not. But if something's bothering you, or you don't like how something is, even if you can't change it, you can own it. Like, you can own your issue with it and make sure that doesn't change.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
Have difficult conversations. I think that's the most important. We just need to continually have
keep that
these
communication
difficult
line,
conversations.
Yeah.
Because it's not to know that this is the society we're living in, that it has so many issues, but we can't turn a blind eye to them.
Yeah. And do it in a way that doesn't sound like you're attacking somebody else. Because for me, like, if I feel like my issue is I feel like being strong-handed, or like I feel this aggressive behavior from men about certain things, why am I then going to go and take their aggressive behavior and bring it back to them? That's fighting fire with fire. If anything, I would like to find a nice lake and just kill the fire. And then give us a year of work off with full pay.
Wouldn't that be nice? Well, with that, thank you both for having these difficult conversations.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it was
a pleasure.
It was great being able to talk about sexism with both of you. I think you had some really interesting perspectives.
I learned a lot from a different generation of viewpoint, because I've not ever been a career woman. I don't have kids, I'm not married. So it was actually cool getting to learn from you too, from the whole transition. I never know how to say it, you know that.
It's important. That's it too. Like, talk to people that have a different experience than yourself. Don't just surround yourself
with people who have the same opinion. You're surrounding yourself with the same opinion, and then what turns into a good opportunity to create change just turns into a bitch sesh.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that you're both coming from these different perspectives, and that's kind of the goal of the podcast, is we have two guests who have two different perspectives, and we get to explore it from both of those perspectives.
Yeah, from the filthy see you next Tuesdays.
And with that, thank you for joining us on A Social Justice Podcast. A Social Justice Podcast is based off of a social justice coloring book, and we explore different social justice issues every 2 weeks. Thank you for joining us on this episode, and I look forward to chatting with you in the next one. You've been listening to A Social Justice Podcast, hosted by Nicola Spurling, brought to you by The Flag Shop, and inspired by a social justice coloring book.